Heidi.
And I'm Byron.
And we are sailing Schmitten, our boat.
We finally got to leave the marina and head towards the Bahamas. Enough repairs and improvements had been accomplished that we felt we were ready. We planned the first leg of the journey as a 4-day and night passage to Pensacola, Florida, where we would rest for a few days before continuing on. This would be our first time to do multiple night passages, and 4 nights seemed reasonable. We also wanted to stay fairly close to the coastline in case we needed to duck into a marina for a repair. We left the dock at 8 a.m. and stopped at the fuel dock to top off our diesel and fill up our jerry cans. We would need to motor through the Houston Ship Channel, which would take about 4 hours, but it was a beautiful morning. We had gotten up at 5 a.m. to get ready to leave. Reagan came to throw off our lines, which was pretty special. It was our last time to see Kemah for a while. Going through the Houston Ship Channel was pretty cool. I loved seeing the different vessels and their cargo, whether for the oil industry, shipping, or tugs. It was always interesting to see what kind of wake we would get as they passed. The birds and dolphins were active around us most of the way. As a smaller vessel, we stay to the outside of the channel, which is the barge lane. We only draw 5.5 feet, so we don't need the deep water part of the channel. We saw lots of traffic here today. Once we got out of the Galveston Bay area and the shipping channel, the winds and the seas went up a few notches. We put up our Dodger for some wind and spray protection. Our snake, known as Snake, enjoys the ride. There were plenty of vessels waiting offshore to enter the Houston Ship Channel. We saw our first rig sightings. There would be so many. After we got out of the ship channel area, it was time to unfurl our sails and turn off the engine. Pure joy. That's always my favorite part, when I can't hear the engine. It's so peaceful. We should really stow our fenders somewhere, but honestly, there's no room. I love the autopilot. Our first sunset of the passage, so beautiful. We are obviously headed east. There's just something extra about a sunset at sea with no land in sight. It seemed to last forever. We were headed into our first night where we would alternate taking 3-hour watch while the others slept. You really can't see anything, so you were just watching the radar and instruments and monitoring the weather. I was mystified by what I saw and what I couldn't see, by what I felt and what felt so far away. I fell in love with God in a brand new way. The sunrises would fill us up with enough hope for the whole day. They were such a joyful sign that we had made it through another night at sea. And this guy, Byron, made coffee and cooked breakfast for us each morning. We agreed we would wear our life vests at all times and tether ourselves to the jacklines. It made sense to take every precaution to avoid a man overboard situation. And it was colder out there than we expected. I had imagined I would be in a bikini. You can see in this clip that Byron is taking a nap in the cockpit. This is where we slept when we weren't on watch during the night. The cabin was uncomfortable because of the high seas, and our autopilot is very noisy in the aft cabin. And also it felt good to know that we could wake each other up easily if there was a problem. The yellow jerry cans that you see are 6 gallons of diesel fuel, so we had 2 of those just in case we needed to refuel. But we planned to sail as much as possible without using fuel and the engine. I can say that we mostly did that. Eventually we had a situation where we had to motor. The last 24 hours of our journey, we ended up motoring because we were hit by a storm. Our solar panels served us well. We had plenty of power for our lights, navigation equipment, and our refrigerator. And the arch support that Byron designed and put together survived all the winds and seas that we had. We did have to tie it down at one point. Most days we had 15 knots of wind. A few nights were sporty with 18 to 22 knots. But we had 40 knots of wind and 30-foot seas in the storm. That was the big one. The storm came up at about 4:30 a.m. on our 4th night. We had already brought our sails in at about 2 a.m. because the winds had just gone away. Later we figured that was right before the front. There was lightning all around us, but we weren't hit. With the lightning we could see the sea state, and that was terrifying. So many rigs. We were told about the rigs. We could see them coming up on our radar. Usually we would just adjust our course a few degrees to go around them. The decommissioned ones would emit an alarm. We only saw a few that weren't lit up near Port Bolivar in Texas. We also saw flashing light structures that marked shipwrecks. This was one of the decommissioned rigs. Most of our day sailing was very uneventful. We only saw 1 or 2 other vessels once we were offshore. We were about 50 to 60 miles off the coastline most of the time. Usually we made about 100 nautical miles per day. We did a course adjustment once to get further offshore. This added an additional day to our journey. Our faces had quite a bit of wind burn during the trip. Naps are essential for a successful night watch. It's my turn on night watch, and I think I have the 11 a.m. No, 11 p.m. I kind of just woke up from barely sleep, but I have the 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. and we're just looking out for oil rigs. There's one coming up. I might have to adjust the autopilot to go around it, so I've got some tea to help me stay awake. Every morning we were greeted by the dolphins. No matter where we were, they found us to say good morning. I would have liked to have shared video of the storm and our challenges there. However, we were literally holding on for dear life. There were not enough handholds in our cockpit. It never occurred to me to try to get video because we were seriously in survival mode. What a way to feel alive, but not by choice. Just staring at the horizon was mesmerizing and peaceful to me. I would need that. We were on our final leg of the journey, closing the distance between the boot of Louisiana and Pensacola, and that would take about 20 hours. We did not put up our sails because we could tell our rigging had been damaged in the storm. We motored all the way and had to refuel underway from our jerry cans. Here's our track. You can see that the tack we made in western Louisiana to get further offshore. The storm was directly south of the boot. Oh, the smiles when we arrived in Pensacola at 6:30 a.m. Our first stop was going to be finding a fuel dock. We found a fuel dock and we decided to go anchor at Fort McRee State Park. It was just a glorious morning, watching the sunrise and being thankful that we had arrived safely. And the dolphins found us again. Time for a toast.